Cathy Brooks here at the AlwaysOn Innovation Summit with Nathan Myhrvold. Pleasure to be sitting with you today.
Likewise, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Well, here we are.
Here we are. Anyway, innovation.
Yeah.
It's a hallmark of Silicon Valley.
It is.
What does hallmark mean to you? It's a postcard.
We care enough to send the very best.
What does innovation mean to you?
Innovation means, to me, it means creating new technological ideas that wind up doing something useful in the marketplace.
When you look at Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
over the time you've been in and around the valley, both in the literal as well as figurative sense, how have you seen Silicon Valley change?
Well, it's gone from being a sort of radical subversive thing where young companies were out saying, hey, those tired old companies, most of which are on the East Coast anyway, we're going to beat them, and we're going to beat them with brand new technology, and they don't even know we exist. And that was the approach early on. I mean, Steve Wozniak is speaking right now, and he and Steve Jobs couldn't convince HP to get interested in this area. That, of course, that's a local company, but still, it was a subversive activity. Now, it's very hard to count it as a subversive counterculture activity. There's dozens and dozens of Silicon Valley billionaires. There's scandals because people backdate options or do this, that, and the other thing. Basically, all of the stuff that we thought we were fighting in the early days of big corporate America, guess what? It's now big corporate America in Silicon Valley. And so all of those attributes we now share, and it doesn't really fit to call us revolutionaries anymore. Well, or all of us. Obviously, there's young, new companies that are coming up. But even the young new companies don't have the revolutionary feel, to me, they did in the old days. Because these days they know they go to Sand Hill Road, you know, you can't sling a dead cat without hitting a venture capitalist on Sand Hill Road. There's kind of a whole algorithm for how you go about getting funded. Whereas, you know, back in the day, it's like talking to your grandfather, back in my day, we had to work really hard even to find a venture capitalist. And it's true. I mean, in 1983, when I started my company, there was very, very little in the way of venture capital or entrepreneurship compared to today. We were excited that there was stuff that was starting, but it was so small, and now it's a giant industry.
What about the entrepreneurs who you see now going through this cycle? Certainly the infrastructure is a lot different than it used to be. Have the innovators themselves changed at all?
Well, they've changed to some degree. I think there's more professionalism of entrepreneurs in the sense that there are lots of people who go to Stanford Business School expecting that they're going to go become an entrepreneur or they're going to go become a venture capitalist. And so it's become more routine and algorithmic and sort of a recipe for success. But the entrepreneurs are still trying to do really hard things, and a large fraction of them will try to do a thing that's a little too hard, sometimes massively too hard. And that fundamental aspect of people going to take risk is the same now as then.
Now, the work that you're doing now with relation to innovation, I believe the Business Week cover said Master of Innovation, with that lovely picture of you.
What my company is trying to do is invent new technology. And we've decided to focus on that, also to invest in invention. So invention is our mantra. That's what we're all about, is invention, as opposed to things which are other aspects of the pipeline. One way to think about this is that the number of venture capital firms has grown by like a factor of 100 over the last 20 years, that total capital has. But where did the ideas come from? No one has provided funding for people to invent things, or very, very few people have provided funding to invent up front. And that invention financing has not grown by a comparable factor of 100. So we think of ourselves as funding a pre-seed, pre-venture capital thing, which is how do you invent the stuff in the first place? If you go in today's Silicon Valley and say, look, I don't have an idea, but I'm sure I'm going to get one, but I need some money now, most venture capitalists will say, you know, we have a lot of folks that have a plan. Why don't you come back when you do have a plan and we'll talk to you, but not until then. My company is willing to fund them on the basis of the invention alone, or even without an invention, say, hey, we'll fund you to create something cool. So, and we could be wrong.
But I mean, and then it becomes an economies of scale, because at a certain point you have to throw enough things at the wall when you're doing something at that level. So about how many irons do you have in the fire at any given point in time?
We file about 400 patents a year.
Wow.
Which would put us about the 25th largest inventing organization in America. which is, you know, for a bunch of people in a little swamp in Bellevue, Washington, we don't think it's so bad. I think it's surprising to me how few Silicon Valley companies, particularly ones that are now rich and have plenty of resources, don't put effort into doing either building fundamental R&D or to just inventing. It's always tempting to say, let's take our product and take it to one next step. Let's do an incremental improvement. And of course that makes lots of business sense, but you shouldn't shut yourself off from also funding a few things that might be really revolutionary.
What about advice for entrepreneurs?
Well, you know, this is more of a comment than advice. Entrepreneurism requires several things. It requires having an appetite for risk and an ability to go do things other people think are impossible. It requires lots of intelligence and training. It also requires an amazing amount of naivete, okay? Because most things you get yourself into turn out to be way more involved than you ever thought. You had this plan, oh, it's all gonna be simple, and this is what we're gonna do. And it turns out, no, it isn't simple. And if you really knew all the things then that you know now, it'd be tough to go do it. Of course, on the other hand, if our parents really knew what they were getting into, most of us may not be here either.
This is very true. Well, Nathan, I know that you must skedaddle, but thank you very much for sitting down and talking with me today. It was a great pleasure meeting you, especially after reading about you on the elliptical trainer at the gym. It's very exciting for me. Okay. The master of innovation. I feel like I should curtsy or something. But Nathan Myhrvold, thank you very much for taking the time today. I'm Cathy Brooks at the Always On Innovation Summit. Come back for more.